Welcome again to another edition of Drummer Nation, the show for and about drums, where we talk drums and drumming with the best in the world. And today is no exception. I have three guests today, three world-class gentlemen, and the topic is the life, music, legacy, and wisdom of one Mel Lewis. And I have three excellent gentlemen who knew him very well, and we can share some wonderful stories about Mel. Let's start with my partner in crime and co-host, Adam Nussbaum. How are you, Adam?
Happy to be here with you and these illustrious colleagues and talking about somebody that we all had a deep respect and affection for.
Indeed. Now, you're about to head out on the road somewhere, right?
Oh, yeah. But let's not talk about
All right.
me.
Always, always. All right. Next up, another world class drummer who is also one of the best jazz historians you'll ever find, Mr. Kenny Washington. Hello, Kenny. Thank you for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, and hello, fellow multi-percussionists. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see you all.
Another guy I went to college with many, many years ago, a long time ago. Good thing neither one of us have gotten any older. A great drummer who is also a renowned educator, and his books are standard pedagogy now for drum set. Mr. John Riley. Welcome, John. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Great to be here with all of you.
You guys have all been on the show before, so you know what's up. There was a time when a lot of young up and coming drummers in and around New York and elsewhere fell under the guidance, almost a mentor, a patriarch in the form of Mel Lewis. Isn't that correct?
I would
Yeah,
say
at
so.
least, yeah, I think absolutely. At least um, the ones who had the cojones enough to listen to what he had to say. He could sometimes be kind of rough, but as far as myself, I loved it. I felt I had it coming to me. But I mean, a lot of times, I mean, guys just couldn't. A lot of young drummers couldn't. He was just direct, and he would just tell you straight. A lot of people couldn't take that, man. But for the ones who were smart enough to sit back and shut up, you know, uh, you learn a lot. We're one of the we're part of the three. There's a few others, but not many, not many.
What era would this have been? When are we talking about?
19 no, it would be it had to be about August of '78 because it was in the summer that I met him at Stryker's Pub.
Were you
That's
playing with
that's
Lee Konitz?
yeah, I was playing with Lee. Actually, I had met him the summer before because I went to this I went to Jazzmobile, and they had the Mel Lewis big band up at Jazzmobile. Jazz, for those of you who do not know, Jazzmobile in the summertime, it's a uh, great program, and during the summer months they have jazz like on a float. It's like on a truck, and this organization would have music like all over the city, Manhattan, the 5 boroughs of New York City, and for free. And they would have great musicians, and so this is how I got a chance to see Lee Morgan, Don Bias, and all these kinds of people. But the Wednesdays were the big thing because they were up at Grant's Tomb up in Harlem. Right behind Manhattan School of Music. And so Mel's band was up there, and I came up there to see him. And he saw me with this record. Now, at that time, that record was rarer than hen's teeth. You couldn't find that nowhere, man. But I had a copy of it. And so he saw me standing off to the side on the ground as he was, setting up the drums on the float. He says, "My God, where did you get that record from?" I said, "Well, I had it." He said, "Well, my father had the record." So then he said, "Can I see? Can I see that record?" So I went up to the podium and handed it to him. So then I said, "Well, while you're at it, Mr. Lewis, can you autograph it for me?" which he did on the back here. And so that was it, man. I mean, so I didn't see him again until the following summer. And when he saw me, when Lee Konitz introduced me to him to show you how sharp he was, he says, "Hey, I remember you. Aren't you the guy that had my record on the Mode label?" And I said, "Yeah." And so that was that was the beginning. And then right after that, he straightened me out. I mean, oh boy, no uncertain terms. He
Well, we get
but
to the stylistic stuff. How about you, John? When did you meet him?
Well, I think I first met him when he and Thad came to North Texas to play a concert with the 1 O'Clock Band my freshman year there. It was my first semester in school. And that would have been the fall of 1972. I didn't really meet him, but he was there and we interacted a little bit. Um, I guess the most sort of profound meeting was when I was playing a concert with a small, like a 10-piece band on Long Island in one of those trucks like the Jazzmobile. It was kind of up against the beach, and there were two bands. There was band I was playing with, which was led by a guy named Richie Iacona, and we were the opening act for Benny Goodman. And I don't know who was playing with Benny Goodman, but I arrived, I pulled my car up to the truck, to the stage, and the sound man ran over to me and said, "Hey, you don't need to use your drums. Benny Goodman's drummer said you can use his drums." So that was okay. That was good with me. Um, and I went up on the stage and recognized they were Mel's drums. And at that time, they were the pearl drums with all calf heads on them. And we did a little sound check, and then we played our set, and those guys were having dinner. And when they came back, they heard some of our set, and Mel came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, those drums sound terrible. Why didn't you tune them?" And I said, "Well, they're your drums, Mr. Lewis." And when the moisture from the ocean came in, the pitch went like subsonic. And he said, "Yeah, but they sound like shit. Why don't you tune them?" And so I told him that. And then he gave me some advice. He said, "Hey, if you're playing with a rock band, would you ever not play the bass drum?" I said, "No, absolutely, I'd play the bass drum." He said, "Well, you got to do it in jazz too." And I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I certainly adopted that practice shortly after that.
That's interesting because there's a universal rule of subbing, which is you play them as they are. You don't want to go up and tune somebody's drums. There's a story with
right.
Roy Haynes at the JATP concert, and Buddy's kid is there. And Roy sits at the kid, and Buddy says, "As they are, Roy." So I would be very hesitant to tune Mel's drums too. How about you, Adam? When did you meet him?
Well, I initially met Mel, I believe it was 1972 or 73. I really can't remember. They came up to with a quartet, Thad and Mel, with George Mraz and Walter Norris to Norwalk High School, and they played a concert. And I remember hearing them and enjoying it. And I said hello to him, and that was about that. And I never really connected with him until a little later. I think it was the early 80s. There was a club called Paulson's that was on 72nd Street and Broadway. And I was playing up there one night with Mike Moore and Schofield. And Mel showed up because he lived nearby. And I asked him if he'd like to sit in. And I had my walnut Gretches, and I had calf head on the bass drum and the snare drum, and I had some old K's. And I was holding on to a little bit of red hair back then. And I guess he kind of saw me and heard me and said, "Wow, it's kind of like a younger version of me." And so then I let him sit in, and then it was crazy. This is a story that's in the Chris Smith book. Mel, after the gig, He said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "I'm loose, man." He goes, "Come over to my house tomorrow." So I went over and I rang the bell. He came down to the lobby. He brought me down to the basement and he went down to his storage area and he had a floor tom and a snare drum that matched my kit perfectly. And he said, "Here, I want you to have these." And I'm like, what are you talking about?" He goes, "The rest of the kit was stolen. I'm not playing them anymore. You take them." So I was like, what? I was amazed at his generosity. But, Kenny really peeped it. If he dug you, he was very encouraging, but he didn't suffer fools and he would call it like it is. And he would diss some people, and, he was just known for not taking any prisoners. But, usually everything he was saying was very truthful. And I think we were all fortunate that he somehow dug something we were doing, and he was so encouraging. And I just have many memories of going down and hearing the band on Monday nights and going up to the apartment and he'd play records. And, it was just fun hanging out with him. And he was very, very supportive of the people that he liked. If he didn't like you, forget it. But
Well,
I consider myself one of the fortunate ones that I had a certain degree of endorsement from him. Um, I remember in 82, 83, when he was going off a lot to do the Cologne radio band, he had asked me if I could cover the Vanguard band. And right at the same time, Gil Evans started a band again, which I was part of. And I said, "Mel, I really want to play with the band." He goes, "Nope, you're going to go do Gil's gig. That's going to be your gig because if you're doing mine, you're only subbing for me. And you should have your own thing." So it would have been a good education for me to play with that band a little more. But he was, he was, he was that term I like to use, a one in a row.
well, Kenny, you probably each have stories where you had a watershed moment of something Mel laid on you. What would you say that would be, Kenny?
Yeah, this is I guess Chris Smith talked about this story in his book as well. So, all right, now here I am playing with Lee Konitz. Now, Lee Konitz is a great alto saxophonist, and it was Jimmy Knepper, the great trombonist who played with Mingus for many years. He's the one that recommended me to Lee. So, because they were having problems with another drummer, which will remain nameless. So I showed up playing at this joint called Stryker's Pub. Lee Konitz lived right across the street from Stryker's.
86th Street.
86th Street, that's right. Yeah. So then I went up, I started playing with the band. And so what happened was I was playing with Lee, trio, quartet, sextet, I did a lot of things with him. Now this club was kind of small. And at that point, I was playing a bit loud. So Lee used to tell me, he says, "Listen, man, I love the way you play, but I don't have the guts to play like that." That's exactly what he said. "I don't have the guts to play like that." He says, you're going to have to tone down, man. So then the first thing he does, he says, "You ever hear the record that Elvin Jones made with me?" And I didn't know that record. It was called it's the
Motion.
trio with Motion. Yeah, Motion. You couldn't find that record anyway. See, it's different nowadays because all the stuff is on the internet. There was no internet back then, so I looked. I couldn't find the record. Record had been out of print for years. So I was over at a pianist's house, a cat by the name of Ray Gallen, and I'm looking through his records, and he had an English copy of that record, English reissue. I said, "Hey man, I'm borrowing this record." I just gorilla the record, man. So when I took it back home and I'm listening to it, and then one of the things that Lee said was, he says, I hired Elvin Jones for this session. I went to see Elvin. He was playing with John Coltrane the night before, I guess at the Village Gate. He said, man, Elvin was bashing, man. I mean, he was swinging, but says he comes into my date the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, tipping. He said, but with the same intensity at pianissimo that he was playing with John Coltrane the night before. He said, that's what you got to do. So then, okay, but I guess it wasn't sinking in quick enough. So I'm working with Lee up at Stryker's Pub. So during the break, this was in the summer, so it was kind of warm. So we was all standing outside waiting for the next break. I'm hanging out with crazy ass Burt Collins, man. That cat was great trumpet player, but I mean, this cat was silly, man. That was my man. All of a sudden, this is during the break when it first started, about first 5 or 10 minutes of the break. Then all of a sudden, the door opens up to the club, and Lee sticks his head out, and he sees me. He says, "So okay." He says, "I got somebody that wants to meet you." So I walk in the back of the club, and then I could see it was Mel Lewis, man. So he stands up. So Lee Conrad says, "Kenny Washington, this is Mel Lewis. Mel Lewis, this is Kenny Washington." And that's when he said, "Hey, man, I remember you." So then Lee walks away. So now there's like a chair, like these chairs that were just sitting around. So then he kicked the chair. He says, "Sit down, man." And when he kicked the chair face to face with him. "Sit down, man." So then he says, "Yeah, man, you play good. Good time. You have good sound on the instrument and great ideas. But you play too goddamn loud. It don't make no sense to play that loud in this club. You knock all the windows out in this joint. Doesn't make any sense to play like that." It says, and you young drummers, you never use your bass drum. Why, it was a funk record. You didn't hear any bass drum, you think something was wrong. Now, wouldn't you? And then this is one thing right after another. I mean, this cat is just reaming me, man. So then he says, and that ride cymbal you're using, nah, that's not a good cymbal at all. It's not good at all. So then, so now, so then I said, after all this, I said to him, "Well, Mr. Lewis, I know you have lots of cymbals. Why don't you lay one of yours on me?" So then he's writing down his number, and he's staring at me, and he gives me the call. He's, "Call me. We have a lot of work to do." I said, "Okay." And he split. So about I don't know, 3 or 4 days later, I called him up. He says, "Come on up to the house." So I get up to his house. Now, see, I think what must have happened is Lee must have been talking to Mel on the phone about something entirely different, and I'm figuring that the conversation went like this, or whatever business or whatever they were talking about. When that finished, Mel says, "Hey, man, what you doing? What you doing?" So Lisa says, "I'm working with the 9-piece band, man, that I have up at Stryker's Pub." "Oh, really?" This is Mel talking. "Oh, really? Yeah." He said, "Well, who's playing drums?" She says, "Oh, I have a guy by the name of Kenny Washington. He's a young guy." And so I can hear Mel say, "Never heard of him." He says, I'm sure that Lee must have said, "Come on up. He could use your help." And this is how he shows up at Stryker's. I went over to his house, right? And I go over to his house. So the first thing when I walk in, he lets me in. He says, "Young man, you want to be a success in this business?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "You have to learn adaptability. Without adaptability, you will not survive here in New York City. You won't play shit." And he just shook his. He says, "Sit down, man." And from about, I don't know, I guess it must have been about 7:30, man. 7:30, 8 o'clock. I went from about 8 o'clock, and I left his house at 3 in the morning. We didn't touch a pair of sticks at all. And what he did was he sat up there and he was playing me different records that he had made. And what he was telling me, he says, "Man, you have to learn how to play in these different styles." And he's talking about dynamics. He said, "Man, you play too goddamn loud." He says, "Listen, You don't need any monitors or anything. Use those two funny looking things on the side of your head. Those are your monitors. He says, if you can't hear everybody, you're playing too loud. It's your fault. It's nobody else. It's your fault. And you don't need any. And you don't need those monitors. That's all garbage. He says, but if you can hear everybody, even the piano that's on the opposite side of the stage from you, if you can hear everybody clearly up here, well, then that means you're playing the right dynamic level. And that means that the people in the audience can hear everything. You don't need all these monitors. That's all that shit is a waste of time. And I'll never forget this. He says, if you follow that rule, that works at Carnegie Hall or a Dixie Roadside Diner. I'll never forget that. So I mean, he's playing me these records that he had made. He's talking about the difference between playing with Stan Kenton's band and playing with Terry Gibbs' band and playing with Ray Anthony's band. And he played Alley Oop, one of the early, rock and roll records. Then he switched and he played Barbra Streisand, I Love Me Barbara, the pink covered record. I didn't even know he was on that record. He played that record. He played Jesse Belvin, the record. Is a great singer by the name of Jesse Belvin. He played all kinds of things for me, man. Um, and when I left his house, it's like I felt like my head was about to burst. He had pulled my coat to, you know, um, and all the different people that he had played with. Now I wanted to be like the guy that made all the records, the guys that made all the records, at least in the East Coast in the 60s, O.C. Johnson, certainly O.C. Johnson. When O.C. died, Grady Tate did them all, or a lot of them. This is before Mel Lewis came back to New York. See, so my father had all these records that had these great guys on them, and they could play anything and play any style. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I was sort of kind of trying to do and wanted to do. But for Lee Konitz, it wasn't happening quick enough until he sicked Mel Lewis on me, man. Then things, then things really made sense, man. And so then after that, oh, and then he turns around and he goes in the back and he comes out with this symbol. And then he says, I want you to try this symbol out, man. I think this symbol will work for you. And so he says, now, this is a loan. This is not your symbol, but this is a loan until you can find one that you like. I said, okay. So then every time he would see me, this cat would come down to the clubs, man. You never knew when he would show up. He would show up on my ass. I mean, making sure I'm playing the bass drum. I mean, just he show up anytime. And he would say, listen, man, don't get too used to that cymbal. He did that for years. he says, I said, I know, Mel, I know. And then finally, after a while, he said, man, I'm just joking with you, man. That symbol is yours, man. I gave you that symbol. But
And let me ask you, Kenny, is that the symbol I took
yeah,
to Istanbul?
yes,
That's what I thought.
yes, yeah, yeah.
So many
Yeah,
years
that
later,
yeah,
let me jump in here. Many years later, the symbol was cracked, and Kenny was looking for somebody who could recreate it. And Jeff and I, Hamilton, went over there and tried, and we couldn't recreate it. It was 50 years old at the time and cracked, but we gave it a college try. Anyway, it's good to hear that's the whole
yeah,
story on that symbol. Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
great.
but that's how and then so we became close after that. I mean, I would come down to the club. I played with the band for a while too, off and on. But just to be around this cat, man. I mean, he. Oh, here's a funny story about that symbol. So now, at that, I was just starting to work, man. When I met Mel, I was barely legal. But then I was starting to work a little bit, and so one of the gigs I got was with vocalist Betty Carter. So Betty didn't like that symbol. She didn't like that symbol at all, man. I mean, so then that's when I had to go. I had to go to. I remember taking the bus, man, to up to Boston or outside of Boston to go to the Zildjian factory. And Joe Cusatis is the one that set that up for me. Thank goodness for him, because Betty was complaining about the cymbal. So I ended up having to, so I got a flat ride, and on that record that I made with her, that was like a mini cup cymbal. She said the cymbal that Mel gave me had too many overtones. Okay, fast forward. I'm on the gig. Mel comes down to check it. He wants to check it out. Hey man, how come you're not using that cymbal I gave you? How come you're not using that cymbal I loaned you? This is because because Betty doesn't like the cymbal. What do you mean she doesn't like the cymbal? Well, she doesn't like the overtones. Fucking singers, they're all retarded.
That's
I said,
great.
Mel, I said, Mel, what do
You
you
tell
want
her.
from me, man? I'm just trying to keep it good. Yeah, I know, Wash, but I said, hey, man, and we looked at each other. I just shook my head and said, hey, man, what can I tell you, man?
Great, great stories. John, you were handed your ass at some point by Mel in a loving, sort of positive way?
Well, I guess after that experience where I was playing his drums on the Benny Goodman gig, he became kind of very nice to me and started sending me as a sub for him on rehearsals with other bands, not with Thad and Mel or the Mel Lewis Orchestra. I never really had a bad word from him. Uh, I mean, I'm far from perfect and far from I mean, I am a disciple, but no, he was always really nice and really generous. Um,
For people who might not know, there was a long-standing big band Monday nights at the Vanguard, Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, and it's now the Vanguard Orchestra, and John's been doing it longer than Mel did.
that's true.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you about the first night I did it. The band used to play three sets. It started at 10 o'clock, which was really like 10:15. And I got a call from trombonist John Mosca about quarter of 10 that Mel suddenly has a family emergency. And can you come and sub? So I was living in Queens at the time. I took a shower and drove in there. And the band had started playing. Joe Lovano moved from the saxophone section and played drums. I think they were playing Groove Merchant. And so then I played the first set and I played the second set. And by the end of the second set, Mel arrived at the club. Excuse me. I noticed there were microphones all around the band that weren't normally there. It turns out it was a live broadcast for Japan, and I
Hmm.
have a cassette of that little gig. But after the second set, I went over and saw Mel there. I said, Mr. Lewis, I assume you'd like to play the third set. And then he said the greatest thing ever to me. He said, no, I like what you're doing. Play it the way you hear it. And it was like so liberating to get that little endorsement from him. Um, so I never really had a confrontation with him other than that first story about playing the bass drum and tuning the drum.
How about you, Adam? Some kind of cryptic advice or sage wisdom? Just generally supportive?
I just liked being around the guy because there was so much music coming from him, and he was always just nice to me. He was always kind to me. I guess he heard me. There must have been something going on that he approved of, and I never really got tuned up from him. I ended up subbing for him, and I was fortunate enough to get to work a week with a sextet that he was involved in with Bob Brookmeyer. Because once again, he had gigs over in Cologne with the WDR Big Band, and that was really where he was able to make some money, and he was over there a lot. And I ended up doing a week with Brookmeyer, with Lovano, Dick Oates, McNeely, and Mark Johnson. And that for me was great. And I do remember Mel coming over to my house because we had to do we had to go up to Binghamton University and do a workshop. and I'm the rookie. So I'm like, say, Mel, come over, man. I want to be able to, pass on some of what you would say to these kids because I don't have the depth of experience that you do. And so he was there. This is funny. He comes over in the afternoon, probably around 2 o'clock, and I'm sharing my studio apartment, which is about this big, with my wife, Susan. She's working down on Wall Street. She comes home at 5. She just wants to cool out and chill. And she comes into the house, and Mel goes, "Hey, yeah, so Susan, yeah, so what's for dinner, Susan?" And she's like, "What the?"
Who is this
It's like,
guy?
he just wanted to hang out and keep talking to me about stuff. And I was happy to hear it. She was like, he was the thing that wouldn't leave. But he wanted to be there, and we hung out, and it was just very funny. And somewhere I have a cassette of us talking about things that I should try to, pass on to the younger drummers. Meantime, I'm, a rookie myself, at least feeling that when I'm in the presence of somebody like that. But, the things that Kenny brought up, these points about adaptability. You have to play what the music needs. What is the music telling you to play? And Mel always knew how to get in it. Not get over it, but get in it. And, the way he would play ensembles and figures, everything was so seamless. It was like he poured chicken fat and grease on everything and made everything smooth, no herky jerky, and just the way things would flow. And, it's like if you're a young drummer and you're just expecting to see a lot of pyrotechnics and technical things, you're not going to get that from Mel. But you try playing like that. Guys would say, "Oh, it sounds like he doesn't have any chops." And I'd say, "You try to do that and pull it off that way, where it has that flow and everything." It was, he had an innate sense. And I also remember his father was a drummer. So when he grew up, I think he's probably one of these guys he could probably play before he was walking, just having grown up in that environment. And it's just fascinating to hear how this cat developed. And,
I think Krupa took him under his wing when he was young, right?
well, I think a bunch of guys, I mean, Frankie Dunlop was from up there in Buffalo as well. And, that's another question that unfortunately we really can't get an answer.
Hmm.
Who were the people that he listened to when he was a youngster? We know that he loved Tiny Khan, he loved Davy Tuff, he loved, the guys that came up from the tradition. He had thoroughly
Chick,
absorbed that. Chick Webb, you name it, his ears were
Shelley,
open. Huh?
Shelley man.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it was incredible, actually.
Well, we can't get too deep into his style without the three words coming up. The rub-a-dub. What's the rub-a-dub? You got everybody I talk to has a different take on the rub-a-dub.
Rub-a-dub is the way he breaks up the ride cymbal beat. And it's basically two notes in the right hand, one note in the left hand. And there's that old song that kind of goes booba deba dooba dooba deba doo day, dooba deba dooba dooba deba doo day. What's the name of that?
In the mood, Glenn Miller.
In the mood, yeah. So he's playing boo boo dee doo doo ba doo doo dee doo doo dee like
Right,
that. That's what he described to me. He also said that it was. He said, "Yeah, it's just broken paradiddles," which it
right?
really isn't, but it sort of is.
I understand. In the
And
process
also,
of a band like Zabadab Dibib, the band's blowing along, he's kind of catching those that way. So it never sounded like it
yeah,
was
we
an obvious giant fill, but just something to nudge the band along. Go ahead, Kenny.
well, the thing about it is like he always sometimes, man, he really sounds like the drums are just rolling down the hill. I mean, just but constructively rolling down the hill, and his whole concept is just. But it's also and like the accents being shifted in different ways, but it's ape and see, so like when you hear him play some of those like ensembles like with Terry Gibbs band, sounds like he's rolling down the hill, but then like he's taking the band with him. I mean, plus he might be nailing any other thing that they might be playing rhythmically, man. But it's always like rolling. That's what it just sounds like it's just a rolling effect. Swinging, but rolling,
It's
It's amazing.
spinning. It's like it's inside the quarter note. There's the spin, the subdivision, and he's somehow keeping it. To me, it's almost like percolating the way he's keeping that thing inside the subdivision of the quarter note. And with jazz, it's primarily coming off the triplet. And
Yeah.
I remember one night being at the Vanguard with Mel, and we were listening to Elvin. And Elvin got up and he said, I want to acknowledge a gentleman who has had a deep effect on me and somebody I greatly admire and who's played a lot with my brother. He introduced Mel. And it was beautiful to see that, just giving it up to Mel, because there's a certain thing in the time feel with the width of the time that I've heard is a similarity. Because if you listen to there's that record. What's that great record with Dizzy at the Vanguard with Chick, Richard Davis,
Yeah.
I think Ray Nance is on some, Pepper, and
That's
Mel
right.
and Elvin take turns playing. And at times it's like, wait a minute, it doesn't really sound all that different as far as the feel of what's going on. And I thought that was fascinating. But it was also beautiful to see the respect. When the cats all play that great, everybody gives it up to everybody. And
Well,
I thought that was a beautiful thing to see.
I know Buddy was a big fan too. I heard the story that um, um, Terry Gibbs gave Buddy the Dream Band charts, and he gave them back. He said, I can't improve upon what Mel did here."
Louis Belson
There
too,
was
man. They both, man. I mean, they felt that was Mel's best playing, and Mel was very proud of that, man. Speaking of those records, when the Dream Band records came out, the rest of the live stuff, I remember hearing it in Chicago at the Showcase, and I heard that because Joe Siegel, the owner of the Jazz Showcase, had a cassette of it, and I couldn't wait until I got home. In fact, I bought that record. I bought that record at the record store in Chicago. I couldn't wait until I got back home. I remember when I got home, man, the record was incredible, man, and that was just volume one that was out. So
what is
I
there
call
five
up Mel.
now?
There's more than that. There's got to be about 6 or 7, and there's a new one that just came out. There's another one that just came out about 3 or 4 months ago.
Wow.
You know, all those are textbook examples of how to play with a big band. And I remember calling up Mel when I got back to New York from Chicago. I said, Mel, man, I heard the Terry Gibbs Dream Band records. He says, yeah, Wash, I made that record. I was about your age. I said, yeah, thanks, man.
Well, I also love the Dectet stuff he did. There was some great recordings with singers. I know Ray Charles, Betty Carter is one.
Right?
Joe and Jazz. Joe Stafford is another. Marty Page Dectet. Mel Torme. There's a bunch of those, which
Yep.
I like. That's the idea of a little big band. We all know what I'm talking about.
Ella,
Like a 10, 12 piece
Ella
band.
Fitzgerald.
You get to set up the figures and play big band-ish, but it's a combo. And
Ella
Mel was great at that.
Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
The Ella Fitzgerald record on Verve, which is Marty Page did the arrangements, as I said before.
Right.
What's
There's the
his name?
Porgy and Bess with Carmen McRae and Sammy Davis.
The
Yeah,
Wham of Sam is
yeah.
another
Wait,
one. Yeah, with Sammy.
with the Wham of Sam, he's on half of that, and Shelley's on the other half.
Right.
Right.
Then
He,
the Jesse Belvin record. There's tons of records. Like there's a Mark Murphy record on Capitol that he's on that. Any of those records. And I tried to grab as many of those records as I could. Just to hear his design and how he played things. Now I gotta just make one point so that people understand that he was direct to me. He was not nasty to me.
I
He
took
was
it that
never
way.
mean.
Right.
He told it like it was, man, and that's what I needed. I wish there were more people out here like that nowadays, because but everybody out here nowadays, for the most part in New York City, just guy smileys, man. Yeah,
Hmm.
bro, swing, yeah,
I,
bro,
I,
sound
I
good. Yeah,
I
I'm
took it
gonna-
that way. He wouldn't have said that to you if he didn't dig you, man.
yeah, but I mean, and he didn't, man. You know, and the bass drum thing, man. One time when Jazz at Lincoln Center first started, man, I was the first drummer with Jazz at Lincoln Center. And the first year, I did damn near all those concerts. One of the concerts, Mel came. He was in the audience, and he says, "Yeah, Wash, sound good using the bass drum, but now I was using an 18-inch bass drum instead of a 20." He said, "Now He says, look, Wash, I knew you were using the bass drum. It wasn't projecting. Come on, man. Get yourself a 20-inch bass drum. What's wrong with you, man? Look, you get a 20-inch bass drum and come up to my house and I'll put a casket head on it for you." So I said, okay, fair enough. So I wasn't doing that much big band stuff. So I had some time to think about it. Went right up to Joe Cusadis's, man, on 46th Street and ordered a Gretsch. I was playing Gretsch at the time. I ordered a Gretsch bass drum. A few weeks later, it comes in. Take the drum, go right to that corner, and there was a telephone booth there. Call up Mel. Say, hey, Mel, I got the 20-inch bass drum. Before I could even finish, come on up, man, come on up. All right. Get in the taxi, man. Go up to his house, you know. So he come in the house, and he's looking at the bass drum. So he goes in the back and he picks up. He has a calfskin head, 20-inch calfskin head. He fit it, he wet it, and everything, and set it up for me. Wow, yeah, there you
Woo!
go.
There you go.
he
That's beautiful,
he
man.
wet it, he wet it and set it for me and everything. And then he says, he's tapping the bass drum, he's tuning it at all the lugs. And he says, "Yeah, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good drum." And so then, okay, put the drum down, listen to some records. So it's time for me to split. So I, go into my stash in my pocket. Okay, Mel, tell me what the damages are, man. How much I owe you, man? You don't owe me anything. I said, man, listen, man, I know these calfskin heads are very expensive. So just let me just lay the bread on you. Then he got mad at me.
Uh,
He says, man, goddamn it, I told you. My payment is that you use this bass drum properly. You understand me? I said, okay. Um, and yeah, I mean, so he was, you know, he got me on some gigs. One time, there was this gig, man. It must have been in Scandinavia somewhere, and it was on a boat. It was on a boat, and Astrud Gilberto was there. That's where I first met J.J. Johnson, Benny Carter. That's how I started working with him. Was so there was only two drummers covering all the bands, and he picked me to play with him. We were the only drummers on the band, in this group. And we played with, they had all these different ensembles and things we played with. He and I remember he played. I'll never forget, man. He played with. There was this Dixieland group, the Oiling Boiling Jazz Band or something like that. And I sat there and watched him play Dixieland stuff. Man, he played the hell out of that music. I
I
said,
bet.
wow, they dig it, man. But he was, man, yeah. So I mean, yeah, he could be mean, man. But in my case, I had it coming to me. That's the best thing that happened to me. That was one
Hey,
of the
did
best
we
things.
ever learn anything when people told us we sounded good? we
Mm,
might have gotten some affirmation,
mm,
but when somebody we respected would pull your coat to something, they'd peep you to it. And he said, he would say, I love this line: say what you mean, don't say it mean.
there you
Yeah.
go. There you go.
Yeah.
And he would do that, and he would do it. And the reason he did this to us, he cared about us because he knew we were next. You know what I mean? Just like probably the cats did we're part of this tradition now.
Right.
It's crazy because you know we're all getting to that age. We're probably in the third now, or close to it. And we used to be the new kids on the block, and now we're not. And I
Right.
cherish the fact that the elders, people I loved and respected, would peep me to something like, "Hey, man, come over here. Check this out."
Who
Oh,
were
yeah.
some of the other drummers under his guidance then? I know like Denny Gottlieb, Dennis McCrell, Hamilton, though he was on
Sure.
the West
Yep.
Coast. Who else comes to mind?
Joey
Anybody?
Barron.
Joey Barron.
Right. But we were
Um,
but see, we were the guys that always came down to see him. Most of the other guys, most of the other look, man. At least when I was coming up, you know, most of these guys, and it's still happening. Most of them didn't really. They don't really know the history of these kinds of people, man. A lot of these guys were still around. Yeah, they would go and see Elvin Jones, which is great, But somebody like Mel Lewis, they would shy away from him, so we were basically his children, man. There's like about 5 or 6 of us. That's how I met Riley, man. He's down there at the Vanguard checking out Mel. That's how I first met. I met Adam before that, but we McCrell. That's how I first met him. Joey Barron. That's how I first met him down at the Vanguard.
For,
Sometimes I'd walk and he'd be talking to one of these guys, and then the first thing was, "Hey, you all know each other?" And then he would introduce you. That's when it would start, and I would see these gentlemen at the club all the time, but not a lot of guys came down. I mean, there weren't a lot of them because they were afraid of getting their feelings hurt.
mm,
Because Mel knew about all these drummers, man. He knew about all of them, and he would say something to you, and they had already heard that but they took it the wrong way, man. Oh, he could be mean. Oh man, he shouldn't be talking to people like, nah, man. And so that turned a lot of people off with him. But he was the sweetest person, man, and they could vouch for him. He was the sweetest guy. He just didn't like any bullshit, man. And I thrived on that kind of stuff. See, that's
mm,
my thing, man. Don't blow no smoke up my behind. Tell me the truth.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what he. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me was to have him come around and tell me not what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear. You know, that's the
First,
that's the nowadays, guys is out here with YouTube. Everybody's so great. Everybody, they're smelling themselves. Oh yeah, they ain't playing anything, man. And I was just saying this the other day, man. I wonder what Mel would say. It's too bad. It's too bad Mel's not here to hear what's going on. He'd have plenty to say,
he
man.
sure would. First time I
well,
went to New York
there's
was.
that.
Go ahead.
No, no. Times have really shifted. We were fortunate. We grew up at the end of the analog time. We didn't have any internet. There was no digital. There was no any of that. You know, the things that had the most impact on us, besides listening to our records or CDs, was being in the room and hearing it live and feeling that energy. There's no substitute for that. And the other thing is, I can't blame kids now for how they've grown up because it's just the reality of the times. But the thing which is unfortunate is that now, you'll see people doing these 1 minute blurbs and blips and little things on YouTube and stuff like that, that doesn't get you a gig. Nobody cares how fast you can do a flam at a rat or a rat a lamb or whatever you want to call it. That doesn't get you gigs. What gets you gigs is how you can make music with other people. And it's changed the whole template of how things are. And I don't know what's going to be. I mean, I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I'm wondering how it's going to be because sadly, it seems like each successive generation, there's less opportunities to play on a regular basis, on a nightly basis. Look at what it was in the 40s and 50s. Bands were working all the time. You can't practice that. You're playing, you're working, you're finding out what's happening. And now it's another time. I don't know what it's going to be, man. It's like all we
We
could
can't
do is
know. It
try
just
to,
has to work itself out. Yeah. Let's
yeah,
talk
we'll
about
see
his
what
sound.
happens.
We mentioned calf heads. You might talk about how that differs from a plastic head today, and also his cymbal sound was quite unique. Who wants to take a stab at any of that?
Well, the calf heads um, have a warmth to them. And I find, especially with brushes, there's a clarity and a presence to the sound. Uh, they seem to be much more durable than plastic heads for with the brushes. The surface remains great forever.
Right.
And there's a certain feel that the way the stick bounces off the head, it's almost like there's a little trampoline in the calfskin head that makes the rebound feel amazing. And playing a closed roll on a calf head, the sticks just slide across the head really nice, makes it easy to play a closed roll. Um, Cymbal sound. I got a story for you. About 2 months ago, I got an email from a guy named Marcel Serry, who's a drummer in Amsterdam, and he said a friend of
Marcel
his,
Serres.
yeah, good drummer,
Yeah.
left-handed.
Yeah.
He said a friend of his was in a bookstore in Germany, and over in a corner behind some stuff, he saw a Chinese symbol. And he asked the bookstore owner, where did that symbol come from? The guy said, I don't know, but I think some American jazz drummer left it here. So Marshall went and got the symbol. And then he did some research. It was a Wuhan, 22-inch Wuhan with a bunch of rivets in it. He did some research. He found a bunch of videos of Mel playing that cymbal. Then he sent me
Wow.
a note. He said, I want you to have this cymbal. So he sent it to me, like
Wow.
not just as a gift. Yeah, it's a 22-inch Wuhan with the funny bell. Uh, so you were asking about who are other disciples of Mel. I would say John Von Olen.
Hmm.
Uh, Billy Cobham told me he used to sub for Mel in Thad and Mel's band, which I would have loved to have heard that. And then
Wow.
there's a bunch
Wow.
of guys in Europe that are also disciples. Uh, Martin Vink and a few older guys. Um,
Sure.
yeah,
Getting
so
back to
There's
he
the
had a
Hans Decker who plays with the WDR, a wonderful Dutch drummer.
great
I
drummer.
said to Hans one time, I said, "Hey man, how'd you learn how to play like that?" He goes, "I just listened to those Terry Gibbs records." That was like
Yeah.
his Bible for knowing how to play big band.
Now, the China he used in at the Vanguard, is that the one you're talking? That's not the same one you're talking about, is it?
No, I have that one here.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great
but
symbol
that's a
too.
different one. That's a
Right,
Zildjian.
right.
I get it.
That's an
You,
A Zildjian, right?
That's what I thought.
you know, I tell you what I did. I did a summer tour with Johnny Griffin. Oh yeah, that's the one.
Right.
Ah, that's the grail right there
Did
for China's. Go ahead,
I
Kenny.
did a summer tour one time. I did a summer tour one time with Johnny Griffin, and Dizzy Gillespie was the guest artist. So now with Dizzy, you have to play the Chinese symbol, as I call it, the trash can symbol. You have to play that symbol. when Dizzy plays, he doesn't care what you do with any other soloist symbol wise. When he's playing, he wants to hear that behind him. And he had he had a couple of great ones, man. I mean, the one that he used on his early records, that Rudy Collins and Mickey Roker, finally it broke. It finally just it just broke all together, from what I understand. That was supposed to be a symbol that Cozy Cole had, and Dizzy took it from him. And Dizzy used to carry that symbol around. Well, he had another one. Somebody, and I wonder where that symbol is now, but. Um, he had another one that was made for him that was very good. I knew that I was going to have to play that symbol. I went to Mel's house because there's a certain way you just can't play that symbol anywhere. Anyway, you have to know where on the symbol to play it to get the best sound. I went to Mel's house. I said, Mel, listen, man, I need help with this because I need for you to tell me what the sound is. I had played those symbols before, man, but hey, man, he was the expert at that. And man, I set up there. I don't know how many. I mean, I set up there. There's another one of them days. You go to Mel Lewis's house, you're not getting out of there anytime soon. Forget. It's just
But
it's just
let's
the way it
remember
is.
something, Kenny. Let's remember something too. You generally like a plastic tip stick, and
Yep.
Mel usually used a wood tip stick. So
But
that's
he
going to
showed me.
extract another kind of color from the symbol as well.
Yeah,
So
but
then you have
what?
to figure out how you're going to play it and get that thing.
Oh yeah, but see, that was the thing, man. I took some sticks up there because I knew, of course, I was hip to that. I knew that was going to happen. And see, so then he pointed out some things of playing with a plastic tip stick and where it would best sound on the cymbal. I'm sitting there, baby. Well, watch, play here, play a little bit further down, and he'd walk away to the other side of his living room. He said, "Yeah, that's about it. Yeah." And then I would play in different places. He says, "Yeah, that's the sweet spot of this cymbal with a plastic tip stick." So I learned how to play, a trash can cymbal from Mel. Man, that was
But
his thing,
but does that generalize? Because a plastic tip's can be a little brighter, so you come out a little further on the symbol. The symbol's gonna be a little darker out there.
man. It could be, but then of course the stick. There's no stick that's the same
Yeah,
plastic
and our
or
hands are all
wood.
different. This is our, that's all different.
See, yeah, so then I mean, see, so gauging from what he told me, I was able to figure out, with each stick or whatever it was, and of course the room that you're playing in, the theater, or if it's outdoors, it's all these variables. So through Mel, I was able to figure out how to get the best sound on that cymbal. And he used calfskin heads, that bass drum. I could come down the stairs of the Vanguard and I could hear that bass drum. Boom. I mean, this
You could
I mean
feel
that
it.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. You know.
Hmm.
I
I
mean,
asked Dizzy why he always wanted the drummer to play the Chinese cymbal behind him.
mhm.
And he said, "Well, I'm a trumpet player, and people think of that as a bright sounding instrument." He said, "But I have a dark sound. And when a drummer plays a regular cymbal, it kind of cancels my sound out and it doesn't project. So I need the drummer to have an even darker cymbal than
Totally.
so that my
Yeah.
sound soars over it."
That makes
Oh
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally right because it gives a carpet. Because Dizzy sound was kind of like this. It wasn't like a Chet Baker sound or something else. It was like this. So he wanted something fat under him. I mean, the last thing you would do is play a flat ride or a ping ride behind Dizzy. That would suck up
Nah.
all his sound.
And I think
Yeah,
Dennis
but then
McCrell has the cymbal you were talking about, Kenny.
I think so.
Oh
The
really?
last cymbal that Dizzy had.
Yeah. That was great. That was a great symbol. So I got a chance to play that for about 3 or 4 weeks, being on the road. Dizzy was a guest artist with Griff. So I spent about oh man, he's about 2 or 3 weeks playing every night, playing that trash can cymbal. And he would, I mean, so he didn't want to carry it because he had it. It was in a brown case. So I ended up. He didn't want to carry it, so that I would carry it. And of course, at the end, I was hoping that he would forget it so I could take it home.
I was like most young guys. When I first heard Mel, I didn't get it. Um, at that time, like Billy Cobham had just come on the scene, and music was Weather Report and all
Mm.
that kind of stuff. And that music was more present and in my face and in my ear, and more like the pop music that I heard when I was a little younger. So when I heard Mel, it always felt good to me, but I didn't really understand the subtlety, the magic in what he had. And it took a while, even hearing him Monday nights at the Vanguard, to really get to appreciate how special he was and how musical he was. And one big contributing factor, I think, was that drums weren't his first instrument. I think the baritone horn, like a little tuba, was his first instrument. And I really hear a connection between him and the trombone section in the band, probably because of that, the way he started out.
It's a great point.
He came to the drums from from the music, not necessarily coming to music from the instrument. And I think that has a major effect on how you interpret what's going on and trying to get inside it.
Musicians who are drummers instead of drummers who try to play music. Mel also made a series of recordings, audio interviews with him about jazz history. Those are
With
terrific.
Lauren Schoenberg.
There were 8 3-hour radio broadcasts where Lawrence Schoenberg, who's a saxophone player but also a jazz drumming fan, played what he considered to be the prime recordings of everybody from Baby Dodds, uh, Shadow Wilson, Shelly Manne, Roy Haynes, Elvin Jones, up to Elvin Jones, and and Max
Yeah.
Roach, maybe an hour or two playing mostly live recordings of these gentlemen, and Mel talking about what he heard in their playing, what he loved about their playing, their sound, their touch, their instrument, the way they functioned in different bands. And it's an amazing resource. Mel was born in 1929, and his father was a drummer. So he was around guys from the early days. He saw a lot of people play that we've seen a lot of people play too, but he saw the generation before that. Um, and so there's so much insight and so much passion in the way he describes these different musicians.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, what happened with that, how that started was Lauren had Mel on WKCR playing, doing interviewing Mel about his own recordings as a sideman playing with different people. And I heard that broadcast. I had it on a cassette. Lauren and both of us, we lost our cassettes of that. So
I have.
he decided, oh, I'd like to hear that, man. I mean, so Lauren decided, well, Mel, let's do it again. And we're going to go through the history of jazz drumming. And so a lot of times that Lauren would call me up, hey man, what do you think I should play for Mel? I said, well, man, play this, play that, play that. And of course he had the records. And we would and he would sit there. These broadcasts were fascinating, man. He and so at the very end, they was going to redo Mel and his recordings and his history. Unfortunately, Mel got sick, man. I mean, he got sick, and that's when his cancer got, well, it was melanoma. It got worse where he couldn't make it, man. Period. So it never got to that point. I think he got up to Elvin Jones, and he's going to talk about a few other musicians, few other drummers, and then he was going to go on and do his own recordings. But unfortunately, that never happened. And well, not long after that, I mean, Mel was in the hospital, so it was never, unfortunately, never finished. But I hope that's out on YouTube someplace where you can find that. because I mean there should be a record of that stuff. I mean, it should be a CD or somewhere you can hear all of that stuff. You know, it's
Well,
fantastic, man.
I think for anybody that's interested in the instrument, it's an invaluable document to get this aspect of history. And just very important because, you hear the continuity and you hear how things have developed. Everybody stands on the shoulders of the generations that came before. There's some
Yep.
foundational elements that are never going to change. Having a good sound, having a good feel, playing for the music. I think of that Baby Dodge quote, in that great talking and drum solos. It goes, "You got to play for the benefit of the band." Thank
There you
you.
go.
That will never change. So,
That's a great point.
amen. I'm grateful that we were able to have this guy in our life, and I'm so grateful to have had his guidance and friendship. And he set a standard. We're just trying to just carry on. These cats built the foundation. We're just trying to work on the building.
Well, it's been great having the three of you with me talking about the great Mel Lewis. And those recordings are available. I was listening to some of them the other day. You can find them if you look around.
Great.
So thank you, gentlemen.
History of
And
jazz drums.
History of
I
Jazz
think
Drums,
it might be on the PAS. It might be somehow on a
Percussive
PAS
Art Society.
website. And
I'm not
It
yeah,
sure where I
wasn't.
found
Percussive
it.
Art Society. Huh?
I'm not sure where I found it, but it's out there. You can find them.
Yeah, maybe some of it is also on. At this point, you can investigate YouTube. There's a lot of great things there to find.
And
So,
don't forget all those great recordings. I didn't cover all those because there's so many great discographies of his entire life. John goes through some of them in his book and goes play by play of like Art Pepper Plus 11, where you talk about each track and the form of the
Oh
songs
yeah.
and stuff. There's this great book from Chris Smith, The View from the Back of the Band about Mel Lewis. I think we all have it and have read it. I'm gonna try to get him on the show one day too. All right, gentlemen, we've been talking about the great Mel Lewis and the wonderful legacy of drumming he's left for all of us, and plenty of his disciples are everywhere. Thank you, Kenny Washington, John Riley, Adam Nussbaum. We'll see you guys on the flip side with another edition of Drummer Nation real soon. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thank you, guys. You're wonderful. I appreciate everybody.
Thanks.
See you
Take
all.
care.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Okay.
everybody stay
Yeah.
healthy.